So in a current assignment, we had to talk about how a historic film could be produced today to be sharper and faster paced without losing any of the essential content. Time and motion make up the fourth dimension in film. The way the fourth dimension is used to tell stories and engage the audience today is completely different to the way it was used in cinema 30, 40 or 50 years ago. I decided to talk about Blade Runner, which recently had a sequel that blew most everyone away. While I may mention Blade Runner 2049 for the sake of comparison in a few instances, I will be addressing the original film only. I'm going to run through sections of the movie I believe could be updated to be more fresh and modern, suggesting how the film would be structured if the original was completely remade today. Before I begin, let me make the disclaimer that I don't necessarily think the changes I'm going to suggest would make Blade Runner better. I love the final version of this movie. I think it is a masterpiece and I wouldn't change it even if I was offered the opportunity to do it. I'm merely imagining what the movie might be like if it was remade according to the pacing we expect from a sci-fi film today. Firstly, some general comments. As we know from the recent sequel, the most important thing in Blade Runner is Rachel and Deckard's relationship, because it feeds into the next two essential elements of the story, the question of Deckard's humanity and how his feelings towards replicants change over the course of the film because of his encounters with them. I think the film could benefit from a general increase in pace, while then taking time to deeply settle in the scenes between Rachel and Deckard, thus emphasizing their relationship and its significance. This could be done by using longer takes, slower movements within the frame and with the actual cameras, and by employing slow motion to stretch the captured moments. The other scene that would really benefit from this approach would be the scene where Roy Batty kills Tyrell, and the final sequence where Batty and Deckard face off. Having the rest of the film faster paced and then using longer takes and slower cuts in the scene where Batty hunts Deckard would make him more formidable. It would also give time to pause and reflect on the significance of his final Tears in the Rain monologue, as this is a crucial scene that ultimately tips Deckard over to the side of the replicants. Blade Runner features more than 2 minutes of opening credits. Modern audiences find this very antiquated. It detaches us from the movie because it reminds us off the bat that we are watching a film, something that is constructed rather than something that is real. Today, it would be much more suitable to save the credits for the end of the film, allowing the audience to appreciate and recognize the individuals responsible for creating something marvelous after they have enjoyed it without being removed from the story. Following the opening credits, Blade Runner rolls into a minute's worth of scrolling expositional text. Today, this information would more likely be narrated. Some critics have a beef with narration, but in this case I think it could be quite effective. What if, instead of setting the scene with 60 seconds of reading, the film opened with one of Deckard's trippy unicorn dream sequences, with Rachel's voice explaining all of this information about replicants and their situation in society? This kind of introduction would be similar to the opening sequences of recently acclaimed sci-fi movies like Arrival. The movie could circle back to this over and over, like in Arrival, toying with us and the meaning of Deckard's dream in relation to the introduction and the other contents in the movie. Blade Runner relies heavily on deductive establishing shots, whereas I think today it would be more appropriate to go with an inductive approach, showing details first, then working out to a single wide shot to show the audience the world of the film. The new Blade Runner did this with its opening sequence, and it certainly felt right for this current installment in the story. A cross-dissolve transition is a soft fade between two scenes where the one ending dissipates into the next one beginning. Historically, they were frequently used in film to tell the audience that time had passed between one frame and the next. I cannot remember the last time I saw a cross-dissolve transition used in modern cinema. It appears to be considered outdated and slow. Blade Runner would more likely cut directly to the next scene, as generally happens today, or use a transition like a pan or tilt combined with a graphic match to move the audience forward in time. There are seemingly endless laboured shots of Deckard flying around in his car, showing him inside, then the car from the outside, then the cityscape around him. They really make the pace drag. It really feels like you're stuck on a long car trip, and even though the Blade Runner world is gorgeous in a dark, grimy way, these long shots feel like a waste of time. Most of these could be cut completely to trim the runtime and speed the pace up, as modern audiences usually do not require transitional sequences like these to understand that time has passed and they have moved to a different location. If these shots were to remain, they could be used for character development, revealing things relevant to the most essential threads in the story. This would make the characters richer and more fleshed out. This is something the new Blade Runner did, and even though it is more than 40 minutes longer than the original, it doesn't feel its length. Near the beginning of the film, Deckard runs a Voight-Kampff test on Rachel. As in the previous sequence, this scene contains a few cross-dissolves. These transitions were probably used to signify the passing of time and to suggest how long Rachel's interrogation took. As we learn, it took more than 100 questions before Deckard spotted that Rachel was a replicant. To make the scene more engaging and snappy, it could have been done with some Edgar Wright-esque editing. Think the beer-pouring sequences in The World's End or the moving sequence in Hot Fuzz. Instead of using cross-dissolves to show how long the interview is taking, there could be a counter in one corner of the screen to show the audience how many questions Rachel had answered without giving herself away. This would be just as effective and would break the plodding pace of the rest of the movie. The imagining of future technology in Blade Runner is still rather analog-based, as is most painfully noticeable in the sequence where Deckard does the whole zoom-in enhance examination of one of Leon's photos for clues about the other replicants' whereabouts. As was seen in the newer Blade Runner, future technology is portrayed more like we are accustomed to, with holograms and lots of touchscreen tech. In a modern remake, it would be more likely that this scene would have played out much quicker, as we would expect future tech to be even faster than what we currently use today. The pacing leading up to the scene where Deckard shoots Zora is rather odd by today's standards for a chase scene. The film maintains its slow and steady pace throughout the entirety of the pursuit, then suddenly slows down as Deckard shoots Zora twice, then continues to plod forward with Deckard's facial expressions being the only suggestion that he is truly shaken by killing her. Perhaps a different approach would have been to cut quicker with faster camera movements in the chase scene, then to halt suddenly with a still shot as Deckard shoots Zora, maybe even showing this happening twice from another slightly different angle. This would pull the audience along with the adrenaline of the chase, then stop them in their tracks for maximum impact with the kill shot. Replaying an action twice in films is not as unheard of as some might imagine. This technique was used in The 25th Hour to emphasize the finality and deep meaning of key moments, and would have worked effectively here too. When people experience things that disturb them, they often talk about it replaying over in their minds, and thus I feel like showing Zora's death twice would be effective. After shooting Zora, the film could have slipped into slow motion, drawing out time to focus everything on Deckard's reaction and the conflict within him. For some reason, it was decided to show Deckard entering JF Sebastian's apartment in virtually real time, and this once again makes the pace of the movie rather laborious and frustrating. A modern audience would only need 1 or 2 shots to establish them in the new location before going straight into the anticipated action between Deckard and Pris. The final thing I find intriguing in this movie is that it is very hard to judge the time frame over which Blade Runner takes place. There is only one reference to time at all, which is when Pris tells JF Sebastian that she will contact her friends tomorrow. With the constant darkness, we are left adrift, unable to tell whether it is night or day, and whether that even has any bearing on the film at all. Perhaps it would be more engaging to clearly show over how many hours or days the story runs, because then it could add more weight to Deckard's ultimate change of heart towards the replicants and their plight. Something that would be interesting would be changing up the way time is used in the film to make the story more circular and create some kind of dramatic reveal. This kind of editing is very popular at the moment, with TV series like How to Get Away with Murder using it to keep viewers hooked on the show. As mentioned before, the film could start off with expositional narration over Deckard's unicorn dream, cut to an extreme close-up of a single eye snapping open, then diving immediately into a sequence where the 4 replicants escape and return to Earth to seek out Tyrell, without revealing their identities or their connection to the viewer. Instead of wasting time with the Voight-Kampff test on Leon, the film could cut directly into introducing Deckard as the old Blade Runner Bryant needs back. Only Batty's identity would be revealed to the audience as Deckard goes in search with him, while the other replicants would be introduced separately, only uncovering their connection when Leon sees Zora get shot, and when Batty shows up at JF's flat to join Pris. All the while, the film could continually come back to Deckard's dream before or after sequences that suggest Deckard may not be human. ending the film again with the origami unicorn that seals the suspicion in the audience's minds. For fun, I'd like to theorise about how some kind of online content may have been made about 30 years ago. For this, I picked H3H3's YouTube videos, where they essentially do a humorous commentary on another YouTuber's channel or other films of online media. Ethan and Ela are often jokingly referred to as the dad and mom of YouTube, keeping an eye on those crazy kids out there and calling out unacceptable behaviour from other content creators. As I was thinking about what H3H3 would have looked like in the 1980s, I recalled an old TV show I used to watch as a kid. It was called The Planet's Funniest Animals, and it aired on the Animal Planet channel. Essentially, people would submit home videos of animals doing ridiculous, funny, or inappropriate things, and the hosts would provide a cheesy voiceover commentary while the videos played. I feel like back in the day, H3H3 might have been somewhat like this. It would have been a TV show filmed in a studio, scripted, and viewers would submit home videos of other people behaving badly for Ethan and Ela to roast. Other than the differences I have briefly mentioned already, the main difference between H3H3 today and what they may have been like 30 years ago would be the lack of one quintessential element of online content today: the jump cut. Jump cuts occur when the editor removes sections of the video, often in the middle of sentences, sometimes to eliminate annoying ums and awkward pauses, and sometimes for the purposes of comedy. They keep the pace snappy, the tone relatively informal, and help limit the length of the videos. Jump cuts are not merely tolerated in online content today, they are expected and even enjoyed. To those like myself who grew up watching YouTube for entertainment and education, online videos feel unnatural without jump cuts. It just comes across as too polished and impersonal without them. However, in the 1980s, jump cuts were not a thing. Had they occurred, audiences would have been extremely confused and even offended, perhaps. It could have been interpreted as the host being incapable of learning and performing their lines on camera. I could even go as far as saying that it likely would have made the presenters seem untrustworthy. The funny thing is that the situation is literally the complete opposite today with YouTubers and the younger generations who watch their content. We don't care that basically immeasurable chunks of time have been cut from the videos. As long as it is engaging and humorous or informative, we will get something out of the content and carry on supporting that content creator. Well, that's it for this video. Once again, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll be back with another video essay in the next couple of weeks. Until next time, cheers.